Hello, I'm Laurel Ruma for O'Reilly Media, and today we're with Michael Lopp. He's the Vice President of Engineering at Slack. He's also the author of the blog Rands and Repose and the books Managing Humans and Being Geek. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
So I actually want to start today with a discussion about how you clarify leadership versus management.
Yeah, it's a great opening question. The thing that I've noticed is that my background is startups that are going from like 200 to like 2000. So whether that's Slack or before that Pinterest or before that Palantir, and there was a startup before that as well. But last decade has really been sort of this rapid growth piece. And the thing that shows up during those rapid growth phases is this word manager gets thrown around a lot because it's seen as sort of this role that is sort of this role it's a necessary role for sort of a force multiplication. It's sort of a means to scale an organization because no longer can you have like 15 merry people like getting their thing done and all having context and being able to share that context and whatnot. There's this manager becomes like one of the first real titles that shows up. And the problem that I find, to answer your question a little circuitously, is that everyone says manager, but they think that's also like those are the people that are the leaders. Those are the people that are like empowered to make the decisions. And the thing I always say is like leadership comes from everywhere. Managers are, yes, hopefully good leaders, but the fact that they have people reporting to them or reviews to write or this sort of thing makes them a manager, but doesn't mean that they are, that means they're totally and completely a leader as well. The leadership piece is human beings feeling empowered to make a decision, to drive a thing forward, to do that, not because you're my manager, it's because you have this great idea and I want to like chase that idea along with you. So it's a long answer to the question, and answers a couple of different questions there, but it's anyone can be a leader. A manager is this person who has some configuration of responsibilities, people, and other processings that they have to go do. That was a long answer.
Well, how about you start with your own story of how you became a manager?
Yeah. I was at this company a million years ago called Landscape, and Tony came into my cube and he's like, "Hey, Lopp, can you take care of these 2-3 people over here? And I'm like, I need some help on this." And I said, "Sure, Tony, what does that mean?" He's like, set up one-on-ones. I'm like, "What's a one-on-one?" He's like, 30 minutes. Okay. And he's like, maybe have a meeting with them to kind of see how they're doing. I'm like, cool. So that was literally the moment that I became a manager. And I had absolutely no clue that actually occurred because 3 months later, we had things we were doing. I went to Tony. I said, "Hey, we're kind of buried. I'd love to if we get some more people here. How do I do that?" He's like, "You need to open a rack. Open a rack." And I'm like, "What's a rack?" It was one of these sort of battlefield promotions. And I literally had no idea that my job had changed in terms of being this person who was a developer into this person who was managing developers. So unfortunately, and one of the reasons I write a lot about this topic is I think there's a lot of those types of changes to role. I was going to say promotion, but management isn't a promotion. It's this different role that happens without a lot of pomp and circumstance, and certainly without a lot of training. So that was my first time, and I screwed it up mightily, but slowly figured it out over time.
So there was a business imperative that was there, and you were kind of just thrown into this role.
Just thrown in, and like no training, nothing other than like, "Hey, can you be responsible for these things and these people?" I'm like, sure, So it was really not explained well.
Did you try to find resources that would help, or you're just like,
No,
I'm going to muddle through?
Just muddled through it. Slowly realized that it was a slightly more powerful position. My brain started messing with me, as it does with all humans when you're like, "Oh, I'm in this position of power to like make decisions and to get things done, so I can't be wrong." So this started the whole like new manager death spiral. This is a talk that I give where I just, you do all, because you don't have good context, you don't have the training, you've never done it before, you don't have the judgment, blah, 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 all these things. I just sort of like failed quickly, didn't ask for help. And it really took me years and years before I understood the value of mentorship and sort of, showing weakness, asking other people's opinions as opposed to like, well, I'm the boss, so I've got to decide, right? It was really a troublesome first 5 to 10 years.
Well, I guess it does take some time.
It does.
How did that kind of affect you, though, like personally, and the way that you approached your job? Did it actually take that long, or you were kind of self-reflective about it?
Well, I think Tony and other managers that I had over time, you get a sense of folks that may be predisposed to be good at management. And I'd say one of those skills is sort of emotional intelligence and sort of that ability to communicate well, and those sort of people skills, those soft skills, which is the worst branding ever for what I consider to be some of the hardest things to do as a human being. Soft skills are hard. But I think that was one thing that I think I had a little bit of an advantage there because I was reasonably good at those pieces. And I think the other piece is, and by the way, I say this like I figured it out like 10 years ago, but it's true that there was a reflection piece of like, oh, that sucked. I screwed that up. Like, how am I never do that again? And for me, one of the things that I did was I started writing a lot in early 2000. I think it was 2001 when Rands and Repose showed up. And it was really a total sort of post-mortem / therapy thing for me of like, how do I feel about this thing? How do I feel about one-on-ones? How do I feel about feedback or whatever the topic was, so that I had some sort of means to kind of articulate how I felt about things. Because it wasn't, I do this thing, I do a lot of talks in front of folks, and I almost always ask, like, how many of you had training as a manager? Because I tend to be places where people are manager types. And the number is a little bit all over the place, but it's around 60% of the people raise their hands and say they have absolutely no training to be a manager. And that's just, I don't know about you, but that just baffles me for a role as important as being a good manager of humans, of products, of whatever part of management you care about. The fact that we so underinvest in it just seems way, way off.
So when you kind of opened up and were talking about your experiences as a manager, did you find other people who were like, oh, hey, I've had that too? So it really was this community of commiseration almost, or just trying to learn from each other because you hadn't found that
Yeah.
path to learning yet.
Yeah, and this is like pre-Facebook, so this is like when blogs were blogs. And there was a lot of, I could tell that I could hit on a soft spot, in a hot spot, something, one kind of spot, because there was a lot of like when I would write about one-on-ones, or like have this article I wrote a long time ago. It's one of the books called Meeting Creatures, or just like, how do I diagnose meetings? Who are the people and what are their things? The feedback was like instant because didn't really, and again, I think speaking as an engineer, I think I was speaking to other engineers, and there's a lot of folks that are worried about their management skills. So I think I found a good little niche to talk to, and lots of people to respond. But here it is, 2018 now, and I have this leadership Slack, and there's 6,000 people on there, and there's no marketing for that. That's just people word of mouth, people trying to worried about being a leader and looking for support. So there's just a huge amount of demand out there.
So as you think about how you are a manager and a leader now, and now you're a leader of leaders, what kind of obstacles are some of the most difficult that kind of stick out to you even now? Like you're always learning as a manager and a leader, correct?
Yeah. I think you've answered one part of it yourself already, which is you don't ever like figure it out. There's no like, oh, I got it now, right? There's always this, and it's a mindset, it's a growth mindset of you're never going to actually really figure it all out. And it's just, I think some of the more frustrating leaders I've worked with are ones who are like, I got it. I did it once, so this is the model, and it's like, well, that worked at company X with people A, B, and C, but you're at company Y with people 1, 2, and 3, and it's even with the perfect plan, you're going to have to adapt that to the culture, to the people, the product, whatever the heck it is. So it's always different. You're always growing. But there's the obstacle is the biggest obstacle is me, because that voice inside of my head is often wrong. So I think one of the things for me, and I think there's other people that would have different obstacles, and I see this with a lot of new engineering managers, is and this is more for frontline managers, but I still have this issue of letting go of the things you love to do. It's so much fun to build something with your hand. You're typing, and suddenly you bring this thing into the world, and that's amazing. And you become a manager, and you suddenly are giving away those skills and those tools to other people, or those responsibilities. And that's super hard. I see a lot of managers struggle in the first 3 years, like letting it go. But that's actually the job, is to delegate folks and to trust them, to build trust in them by like giving them these things, coaching them through it, and doing that. And there's this magical point that I see managers, directors having when they realize that same sort of productive high that you get out of building things can be the same thing out of building a team or building the people that are building the product. It's exactly the same thing. It's not as necessarily direct feedback as I compiled it and it ran. But it's more like, look what I did when I saw this group actually get stuff done. So anyway, that ability to delegate and to let yourself truly be a manager was one of the big obstacles for me.
Well, so here's a kind of follow on to that. How do you know you're a good manager?
It's a really, really easy thing that's incredibly hard to do. Easy thing to say that it's incredibly hard to do. I'm actually writing about this right now. I know it's like a trope, but it's a feedback thing, right? You want to know when your team is healthy or you have a healthy relationship with your team is when you say, "Hey, Frank, how did I do in that all hands?" And you know in your heart and in your brain that Frank is going to give you a true assessment. Like, oh, you didn't prepare. You kind of YOLO'd it and it was entertaining, but it was clear that you didn't actually do the work for that all hands, and which is totally true. And by the way, you hear that and you don't get all like, well, I'm busy because I'm Lopp and I've got like all these things. You don't get defensive about it. You take it as this gift that is about how you did there, and you get better from it. And what I'm describing sounds so easy and maybe attractive to folks, but like there's so many people have so many barriers and hangups, and this me, like in terms of giving feedback and building trust and this sort of thing. But the thing, you're a good manager when you've built a set of people around you where you can ask them and say, hey, help me with, what do you think about this thing? And the feedback you get is not like, well, you're the boss, so everything you do is great. It's like the true, like, that's how you actually know, is when people are like giving you all that feedback. And sometimes it's hard, but you don't hear it as hard. You hear it as like, oh, this is someone who cares about me as a manager or a leader, and they like want me to get better. So you ask your team and they tell you, am I doing well? And they're like, yeah, you're doing great. And it's not a throwaway thing. They're like, oh, I really believe that, because we trust each other enough to give ourselves that type of feedback.
That kind of reminds me of something you talk about often, which is the difference between being nice and kind.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of work on one thing a year. And last year, and really for about 2 years, was this idea of just being unfailingly kind. And I have a whole story about that I could give, but I don't ever see the downside of, in any situation, of taking a kind approach to it. And almost always the response to that is like, well, what about hard things, like letting someone go? Or there's a lot of things that could seem like they wouldn't be the kind thing to do. That's not, they're confusing nice with kind there. Sometimes it's the kind thing to do to let someone go. They truly will not be successful in this role, and getting them somewhere else, getting them to another company, is the kind thing to do, and being kind and respectful about that whole piece there. So you can be kind and be perceived as maybe not a harsh leader, but as a decisive leader.
Can you think about some feedback maybe you've given someone recently of sort of a constructive way of thinking about something? Personal, private life, yeah?
Yeah, this was a while ago. I can't share things from recently, but this is a while ago. But at a prior gig, I was really unhappy with how the team was performing, and I'm not sure. I never fully understood why. I never fully reverse engineered why. But there was they saw some manager in their past career, maybe not there anymore, that just sort of was a command and control kind of person, and this person just made it such that the team didn't feel empowered. So after I figured this out, after about 3 months, I sat down with like two of the most senior engineers, and I said, I have some feedback for you, which is really sort of it's more of an ask of them. I was like, listen, your job for the next month is to tell me all the management bullshit that's we're doing right now, the process piece, the meetings piece, the slowing down thing. I want to get the management bullshit out of the way. The reason it popped in mind is they just needed to hear it from me. And it seems really obvious to me that like there was sort of like this weird command and control structure thing going on there. And it allowed them to it gave them permission to the feedback allowed them to start to like get out of this sense of sort of shared helplessness. And me as a manager saying it just kind of empower them. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think that's an interesting way of helping shift a team and individual people to think in a different way. And especially with that kind of very direct feedback,
Yeah.
also then helps you be a better leader as well, because you need them to act in a way that
Yeah.
is not relying on the command and control.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been in a lot of companies where you have very strong product CEOs, and people kind of think that like there is this sort of like it's all coming down from on high, and that's not at all true, right? There's probably 10% of which is sort of the playbook, if you will, but the other 90% is high trust teams looking at the playbook, kind of going this, but like feeling very empowered to like do their own thing. Those are the teams that I just love to work with.
So, to wrap it up, what couple of pieces of advice would you have for people who are new managers?
Number one, the first thing I look for in new managers is that moment of selflessness when they give away something that they love. So that delegation piece, that's actually one of the biggest things for me. And then maybe this is more managers, but I think first time managers too, is that thing that you love to do, that you're good at because you've always got an A on it. You give it to someone else, fully being aware that they're going to get a B because they've never done it before, right? But you do that knowing that it's your opportunity as their manager to get them up to the A. And even if they get a B this time, even if they get a B, they see you give them the thing, they see you coaching. I don't even care about delivering the thing in this hypothetical scenario. What I care about is the manager was wise enough that she gave this person this thing and said, okay, let's figure out how to do this. I'm going to get you there. And it's tricky to like pick one thing. That's what you asked me to, but that's the thing I'm always looking for is folks that are building their team. They build themselves by building their team.
Well, actually, I asked you to give me two things. So how about
Oh,
your
two
runner-up?
things.
Yeah.
What's another one? I think you kind of alluded this earlier, or maybe I thought it, but the other one is just ask for help. New managers especially feel like there's this stigma to like saying, well, I have to ask for help. But like, it's not a promotion. New managers, a totally new job. 60%, if you believe the Rand's Lopp figure, is like never had any training. So of course you have to ask for help. Of course you're going to screw things up. Of course it's going to be a little rough at the beginning, but finding a mentor, finding someone who's been through it, who has some ideas, is someone just to bounce ideas off of, is invaluable. And it's also actually kind of related to my first point of delegation is sort of there's this, I'm not sure what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to take the leap by asking for help or by delegating. So I think that it's a great way to kind of accelerate sort of your management skills.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. And I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.